Good morning and welcome to Poline Road Baptist Church. We're happy you have joined us this morning for our online service. I want to share with you just a couple of announcements. This first one is specifically for our church membership. On Tuesday, the 10th of November at 7 p.m. is our business meeting. We're going to be doing it in a hybrid format. You can come here to the church. We'll be sitting at a safe distance, and you'll need to wear your mask for that. Or if you want to join us via Zoom, you need to call or email the church office and we'll send you that link. So we'll have both choices, but we will be voting on our budget for 2021 and a few other things. So it's an important meeting and want to encourage our members to join us either live here at the church or via Zoom. So hope you will put that on your calendar. Then just to explain to everyone, we are moving inside. We had continued to stay outside as long as we could with the weather because we're only allowed to sing outside. But we're also going to do a hybrid worship service. We're going to start at 10:30. So there's a change of time. Hopefully you're remembering the change in daylight savings time. So we are changing to start at 10:30. And at first, we're going to meet outside in the play yard for about 10 minutes of singing worship through song. Then we will move inside for our prayer time and our message. So if you are interested in joining us live, please note that change in time. So starting at 10:30, and for as long as the weather will allow, we're going to meet and have our worship through song outside so we can continue doing that. Then move inside for the message and prayer time. If you've got any questions, check the church website or give us a call or email to the church office. I want to share this morning a message from Habakkuk. This is a book you probably don't read a lot, and it's actually pretty short, but I think it's got some very important and powerful messages from God in it. So I would encourage you to read through it. But this morning, I want to share from verses 1 through 4 in chapter 2. So that's Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. And my message this morning is entitled, Wait, It's Worth It. So I had the privilege and honor of marrying one of my cousins, or doing her wedding ceremony, about 10 years ago. This February will be 10 years. This young lady, this cousin of mine, is just a wonderful Christian. She just is beautiful on the outside, and inside her spirit just shines with a love for God. And everywhere she goes, she just finds a way to connect with Christians and serve the Lord. She has a very strong faith that is seen in action. It's not just talked about. She doesn't just have church attendance. And she is an executive for a big oil company. And they move her around the world. But it doesn't matter. Wherever she was living, she would find Christians to connect with. But one of the difficulties with that is finding a Christian man to date and marry. And she did not get married until she was 42 years old. And I did ask her permission to share this with you. So she was 42. But she said she would rather have waited and been connected to God than to have gotten married earlier and been separated from God because of disobedience. And it's worth it. She actually was sent to Russia, where she met her husband, Dima, a wonderful Christian man who we all love and are excited to have welcomed into our family. And so she will tell you it's worth the wait. She will tell you it was difficult at times and other times easy. She didn't tell me this part, but I think part of that would be depending on where her focus was. If she looked at her situation, my guess is when it became difficult. But when she looked at her Lord, he would make it easy. But at 42, she got married to a wonderful Christian man, and she will tell you it was worth the wait. Now, as she shares her story, she will confess, with single women to try to encourage them, she says, they all say, I wish your story would have said you got married at 30 because they don't like this idea of having to wait so long for God to bless. It's okay to trust God, but don't make me wait till I'm 42 as well. But she waited, and she was blessed. And that is the message this morning. No matter what our situation, no matter the difficulty we're in, We will be blessed if we'll wait on God, if we'll wait for his will, his timing. It is always going to be for the best. So let's see what his word says for us this morning. So we're starting in verse 1 of Habakkuk chapter 2. And he says, I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. Then the Lord replied, write down this revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. See, he is puffed up. His desires is not upright, but the righteous will live by his faith. Heavenly Father, again, I find myself asking you the same request. But it's so important that we understand these words. But more than that, give us patience. Give us trust in you. The ability to wait on your perfect timing, your perfect will, your perfect situation for us. May we keep our eyes focused on you and knowing you know what's best and you will bless. You have a heart that desires to bless us, to fill us with your love, with your joy. We get so impatient. We don't want to wait for you. But it's so important. Help us this morning to learn from this message the importance of waiting for your perfect timing. Amen. So what was Habakkuk watching for? It says he was watching. This was a common thing in this culture. On the city walls, they would be thick enough for guards to stand, and they would be watching for the enemy usually. Sometimes they would be watching for a runner because you didn't have email, you didn't have the internet, you didn't even have a phone back then. So what would happen if you wanted to send a message from city to city, there were these young men who were very fast runners. So sometimes standing on that wall, you would also be watching to see if a messenger was coming, and you would send somebody out to greet them. So he's standing there watching for this word from God with expectations and patience. So it's not like he's just back in his home playing his Xbox or eating dinner. He is standing on this wall with expectation, knowing that God will answer him, knowing it will happen. And he's waiting and watching so he doesn't miss it. But he's waiting with this expectation, this hope, this knowledge, this trust that God will respond. We see in Micah 7:7, it says, but as for me, I watch in hope for the Lord. I watch in hope. It means that I know he's coming. I'm not just going, oh, I really need an answer from God. I wish God would listen to me. No, I'm watching with this expectation that I know God will answer me. And he continues, I wait for God, my Savior. My God will hear me. My God will hear me. Do you hear that? He waits with this knowledge of knowing God listens to me. He knows my needs, my request, and he will answer. So I watch for his answer. I watch for his deliverance with this expectation. Most of you will know this verse from Isaiah 40:31. It says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. No matter what your situation, no matter how difficult it is, if I'm waiting, I'm looking, and I'm hoping on God, he will give me the strength to persevere. He doesn't always immediately change the situation or remove the difficulty, but he gives me strength. And it continues, they will soar on the wings like eagles. They will run and not become weary. They will walk and not faint. We will have what we need to persevere. So what did God tell Habakkuk to do? He answered him, but he said, write this down and make it known so that a herald may run with it. The idea here is that this message was important and you wanted to send it out with one of these runners so they could go tell everybody. We are held responsible for warning the people of God's upcoming judgment, of God's word. It is important, my friend, that we don't just listen to God and study his word for our own benefit, but that we share it with the world, that we run with that message so that the entire world can hear. We see in Ezekiel chapter 3, starting in verse 17, it says, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them a warning from me." So God has set us up as this watchman. We are responsible as the children of God to be listening, to be learning from his word, the warnings he gives, the teachings he gives, and we are to speak it to the people of the world. Continuing in verse 18, "When I say to a wicked man, you will surely die, and you do not warn him or speak out to dissuade him from his evil ways in order to save his life, that wicked man will die for his sin, and I will hold you accountable for his blood." Are you hearing that? I will hold you accountable for his blood. If I don't warn somebody, it is my responsibility, and God's going to put that responsibility on me. I will be held responsible for not warning people of the wickedness of sin and the death of sin. We continue in verse 19. "But if you do warn the wicked man, and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his evil ways, he will die for his sin, but you will have saved yourself. I will not be held responsible for his choices. I will be held responsible for my response, for my warning." Verse 20, "Again, when a righteous man turns from his righteousness and does evil, and I put a stumbling block before him, he will die. Since you did not warn him, he will die for his sin. The righteous things he did will not be remembered, and I will hold you accountable for his blood." Again, so if we see a non-Christian that's sinning, we're to warn them. If we see a Christian sinning, we're to warn them of the consequences of that sin. And we are held responsible. We continue in verse 21. "But if you do warn the righteous man not to sin, and he does not sin, he will surely live because he took the warning, and you will have saved yourself." That's our goal, not to judge, not to condemn people, but to lead them to that repentance, and we are held responsible. We continue with this revelation of Habakkuk. When does God's word or action happen? It says there in verse, in verse 3, at the appointed time. Not late, not early. It cannot be coerced or rushed, but exactly as God planned it. At the appointed time, appointed time. It will come, it will happen. And we need to trust that God's timing is perfect and not try to rush it, not grow weary and waiting. And it says in verse 3 that the end, this future coming of Christ it's talking about, will be a part of this message that God gave to Habakkuk, that he's talking about that future coming of Christ. We don't know when it'll happen. We've been waiting for 2,000 years. But God, through Habakkuk, says, don't become weary in waiting. Look at Hebrews 10, verses 37 through 39. "For in just a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay, but my righteous one will live by faith. And if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him. But we are not those who shrink back. Who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who believe and are saved." Because we are waiting on this coming of Christ. We've trusted him. We don't hide from our belief. Verse 3, this wait, it requires patience and trust. God says that this will not linger. His activity will not linger. He is not slow. He's not forgetful. His timing is always perfect, and it's full of grace. Look at 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. So sometimes we look at God and we think, you're not answering my prayer. How long do I have to wait? Hurry, 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 hurry. But his plan, his desire is for everyone to come to repentance. It's for our blessing, for our benefit. And we need to understand that and not become impatient with him. In Hebrews 11, there is a list of people who trusted in God, who had this faith in him, and many of them never saw his promise answered in their lifetime. I'll just pick the one example of that waiting. God promised Abraham and Sarah a son. That would be in Genesis chapter 15. Abraham was 75 years old when he received this promise that he was going to become a father, and a father of many people, of a great and mighty and numerous nation. But Abraham and Sarah became impatient. And we see in Genesis 16 that Sarah gave Abraham her handmaid, Hagar, and she gave birth to a son named Ishmael. He was born when Abraham was 86. So they had been waiting for 11 years and not seeing God answer. So they were not patient with God. They thought this has been a long time and we're just getting older and older and it's going to be more impossible for you to have a child. So they took the situation in their own hands and decided what to do. And it was not until Genesis 21, when Abraham was 100 years old, that Isaac was born to Sarah, his wife. And in those verses, in Genesis 21, verses 1 and 2, it says, at the appointed time, Isaac was born. Not before, not after. So not late, not early. But at the exact time that God had planned, Isaac was born. Now, if you know your history, you know that there was a conflict between Ishmael and Isaac, beginning in Genesis 21:9. And it has continued this day from their descendants. There's continued to be conflict between these two groups, these two tribes, these two sons of Abraham, these half-brothers that should be that love each other and be supportive of each other, are still in conflict today. What does our impatience do? How does it affect us? How does it affect the world? It can have devastating impact. We need to learn to be patient. In verse 3 it says, it will certainly come. God will certainly keep his promise. We need to learn to wait and trust him. As we move on, we see that there is two different groups of people here that Habakkuk talks about in verse 4. The first, it says, are puffed up. They're prideful. They're conceited. And then it says their desires are not upright. Desires is not good or bad. It is a neutral word. It really means our life in relationship to others, how we interact with other people. And so these desires are, if we are prideful and we look down on other people, or if we're loving and caring for other people. But it says their desires are not upright. They're not in line with God's teachings. That's the first group of people that are not waiting, are not patient with God. Charles Feinberg says, pride leads to death because it will not receive by faith the grace of God. When I am prideful, I'm not going to humble myself before God. I'm not going to wait on him. I want it, and I want it now. And so I'm not going to receive the grace of God. So what is the difference? One is prideful, and their relationships are not in line with God's teachings. The other is righteous, and they live by their trust in God in obedience to him. What does that mean? To walk in faith. What does that mean to continue in this walk with God? Well, this walking in faith is, yes, that trusting in God, but it's more than that. It is that obedient relationship to Him. You see, when the Bible says righteousness, it's not about that I am better than another person. My righteousness is my faith, my belief in action. So we see Abraham believed in the Lord, and he was credited to him as righteousness. That's Genesis 15:6. So it says that Abraham believed God. That's how he became righteous. It was not that he was a better man than anyone else. He acted in his faith, in his belief in God. This is when he sacrificed his son Isaac on the altar, but then God stopped him before he actually killed his son. But it says he acted in that faith. He trusted God. He stepped out in obedience to God. And then God said, you're in a right relationship with me. 1 John 2:17 says, the world and its desires pass away, but the man who does the will of God lives forever. That obedience makes us righteous. That obedience and that trusting God's will is what gives us that life eternal. It's not just a prayer we say. It is a life and an attitude of trust and obedience to Him. As we continue, this will live, this eternal life, is that part of our salvation. But it's more than that. It's that daily trusting Him. So let me ask you this. Which group do you fit in? The arrogant that want it now and want it my way, or the righteous who live by faith? We see, what does it mean to live by faith? It is that obedience. It is an action. It is not just a confession of faith. It is a willingness to wait, to take a risk, to trust regardless of the circumstances. I am saying to God, I will do what you want. I'll wait as long as you want me to because I trust you and your sovereign power. I know you know what's best, and so I will obey you because the relationship is what is important. So we continue to see that in James chapter 2. James says in verse 18, show me your faith without your deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. You foolish man, do you want evidence that faith without works is useless? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. James is not saying that I work and earn my salvation, but he's saying if you have faith, if you live by this faith, it is going to be seen in your actions, in the way you live, in your attitude, in the way you respond to people around you. People will be able to see you're a person of faith, not just hear you say, I'm a person of faith. It has to affect your actions to be true faith. It has to affect the way you live. This is what Habakkuk is saying, that if I am living by faith, I am a righteous person and I will live forever. But it will be seen and proven in my actions. Warren Wiersbe says this, it has been said that faith is not believing in spite of evidence, it's obeying in spite of consequences, resting on God's faithfulness. So it's not just saying I will believe God no matter what the evidence is there or not. It is stepping out in obedience. That's true faith. Despite the situation, despite the consequences, I'm not going to say I need to see proof. I need to be in a better place now. My cousin did not say I need to see some hope. I want a family. She is a loving lady, and she loved her niece and nephew as her own kids and very involved in their life. But she said part of her encouragement was looking at the lady who raised my dad and her mom. She was single, never married, and she took in 3 young kids and raised them and taught them about God. And because of that, she has kids and grandkids. I remember visiting her church one Sunday. I was an adult at this time, and I went for some reason by myself. I can't remember why my grandmother didn't go, but people were coming up because it's a small town. They knew I was a visitor, and they came up to introduce themselves, and they go, hi, I am Francis Pilkington's grandson. And you saw these older ladies go, They were without speech because they knew she had never married and was single all of her life. And they thought they had found the greatest gossip of the whole year. And then I said who my dad was. And then they remembered the story that she had taken in those kids. But you see, she was single. And God gave her a family because of her obedience to him and sacrificing and loving on these children. She has family. And Billy Renee said she would look at that and she would remind herself, I want to get married. I want a family, but it's better to wait on God. And God has a different idea of what family is maybe for me, and I'll accept that. You see, sometimes we expect God to answer us, but we expect it to look like we want it to look. And God has a different idea of how he's going to bless us and take care of us and bless others through that blessing of us. We see the end of verse 4, some of the most powerful words of the entire Old Testament, a summary of all of Christianity. And it simply says, the righteous will live by faith. The righteous will live by faith. Is that what you're doing? Are you choosing to wait on God? Even if it doesn't seem like he's answering, even if that answer keeps getting postponed and it feels like he's forgotten about you, are you willing to trust that his timing is perfect? We live in very difficult times, my friends, and it may get a lot worse. We don't know what's going to happen in our future. We keep saying we want to be done with 2020, but 2021 may be even worse. But what I can tell you is, I'm going to wait on God. I'm going to wait on God because he will bless, he will deliver, he'll take care of us. And his timing is perfect, always perfect. So we need to trust on him and not look and be frightened by our situations, not want to rush him to answer our prayers, but to trust him and to wait in faith. Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we are an impatient people. We have become used to everything being quick, 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 with no waiting. And customers complain if they have to wait just the least little bit. We have trained ourselves to be in a hurry and to applaud that quickness of service. So this is so foreign to us, to wait, to be patient, to trust you that in the correct time you will answer us. You'll give us what we need. You'll bless us. You'll deliver us. So this is going to be a difficult message to hear and to apply to our lives. But help us to develop that ability to trust and wait on you. This is our prayer. Amen. Our mission prayer this morning is for one of our friends that serves in a very difficult area in Asia. And so we cannot share exactly, but he shared that back in the beginning of October, 27 houses were swept away in a flood that happened in his area. So for a short time, all of those families had to live with tarps over their house and live in difficult situations. But for this one family, they were patient. They looked and knew that God would take care of them because recently their son had come for a visit and shared Christ with them, and they had accepted Christ as their Savior. And they are now being able, with their newfound faith, to show that hope in Christ, that everything will be fine, that they'll be taken care of as they share and they give and help out their neighbors who also's houses were destroyed in this flood. But the story goes way back. You see, their son moved to a big city for work, and he met a Christian who led him to the Lord in that faith. And he had grown in this faith and was able to come home just before this flood, about, I think it was 3 months ago, and shared his faith story with his parents, with his family. And they saw the difference of depending upon God. And they prayed and received Christ. And he began discipling them. And they met up with another missionary who would disciple them. And when this disaster happened, they were ready to look at it with hope that God would bless them and take care of them. And they shared that hope and have started a house church in their area through this disaster, this difficult situation, and the way their neighbors saw them dealing with it made a difference. Would you join me in praying for this new house church and for our missionary friend? Heavenly Father, I thank you for my friend who has given so much of his life there in this difficult area that's so opposed to your love, so opposed to your truth. But you are still persevering on loving these people through your children. Thank you for this young man who was bold enough to listen to you of when he needed to go home. And he was bold enough to share faith at the right time, just months before this disaster happened, so that his family would be ready because they were already trusting in you to deliver them, to take care of them, to meet their needs. Your timing is always perfect, and we thank you for that. And we pray that you'll just bless this new house church, and may it be a powerful witness in this area, and may the gospel spread throughout the land there. Amen. I pray that you have a wonderful week and that you will ask God to give you that patience, that ability to wait on him, to trust that his planning, his timing is perfect. God bless you with a wonderful week.